welcome to another edition of Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And I won't go through all that again. It's inclusion because that means we include disabilities. Diversity typically doesn't, but the unexpected is what we get to deal with a lot as well. It's all fun, and we're glad that you're able to be here with us wherever you happen to be. Our guest today is Armando Contreras, who is the president of United Cerebral Palsy, Inc., and I'm really anxious to hear more about that. Keeps him and I think a lot of us busy, and there's a lot of good stories and very relevant things to talk about regarding that. So let's get to it. Armando, I want to thank you and really appreciate you being here.
Michael, it's such a pleasure, and really it's an honor that I can be here on your show. So thank you for the kind invitation.
Well, you're certainly most welcome. And Armando is one of those people who came to us again because of Sheldon Lewis here at Accessibility, and he's keeping us busy, which is a good thing. And he's probably working on getting Armando to use Accessibility, unless you already are with UCP. I haven't checked the website lately.
Well, we have. So we've already put in that, I believe, a plugin, and some of our affiliates are actually using Accessibility as well.
Which is cool, and it does a lot to help, which is, of course, what it's all about, because Accessibility using AI is able to do a lot of the work with the AI widget, not all, but a lot that needs to be done. So it's really great that you guys are using it, and I appreciate that, and thank you for it, or on behalf of all of us at Accessibility.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, why don't we start, as I love to do, at the beginning? Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of the early Armando growing up and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so
might as well.
Yeah, the early Armando growing up was in East Los Angeles and East LA. My father had a disability for most of his life. He was in a car accident, and the doctors had said he would never work again. And right about that time when he had that car accident, I was born. I was the oldest of three, and my brother Louis and my sister Elizabeth. So life really changed for him because he was middle class entrepreneur in Mexico. While he was an American citizen, then when he married my mom, then they moved over to Los Angeles, and eventually East Los Angeles. And that's where I grew up. I grew up pretty much you can say, in poverty. While we were in a neighborhood called Barrio, it's just a neighborhood of really, for the most part, a lot of good people. Our neighbors were fantastic, and we knew each other. So that was kind of like the beginning of many years of really, experiencing disabilities with my dad and seeing what he had gone through. And it was tough growing up. Let me put it to you that way for many reasons. So then later I got involved with the Catholic Church. St. Lucy's Catholic Church in Los Angeles, or a small town called City Terrace. And that really changed a lot for me as far as getting involved with community issues, getting involved in helping people, getting involved in connecting with kind of the local issues that were happening in the city of Los Angeles, because those Catholic priests were very involved in that, in ministries, and they went outside of the ministries to help community members, regardless if they were Catholic or not. And prior to that, I got involved as a musician. So I was a trumpet player, and I played trumpet at St. Lucy's Church for about 23 years. But then that did something of sort of a miracle for me, because when I applied, after going to a junior college, East Los Angeles College, and then I applied to a dream university, USC, so the University of Southern California. And I think one of the big reasons that I got in was because of my community involvement. So that led to a full scholarship And that was quite the blessing for me because there was no way that we can afford me going to a private university. So, that's kind of like in the nutshell, my upbringing. Otherwise, I would be here 3 days,
Yeah. What
going through
year? What
going through.
years were you at USC?
I
What?
was there in 85 through 87-ish, around that
Yeah.
time. Yeah, around that time. Yeah, I graduated in 87. Um,
That's much beyond my favorite USC football game, which was, what was it? I think Notre Dame was leading SC 24-0 at the end of the first half. You know the game, I can tell. By the end, it was 55-24 USC, which is the way it should be.
well, SC's had his great moments and SC has had their challenging
It
moments.
has, yeah.
So, last year could have been a better year for us, but, we look to the future and like I always say, fight on. So
Fight on is right. My wife did her graduate work at SC, and
great.
I've never been to a football game there or anywhere. And one of these days I'd love to go, but she just passed away in November of 2022. We were married for 40 years, but I'd already been an SC fan before I married her. And one of my favorite SC stories is that the day we got married, we arrived at the church and it was supposed to be a wedding that would pack the church. A lot of people wanted to come and see us get together. But the wedding was supposed to start at 4:00 and like the church was less than half full. And about 4:12, suddenly the doors opened and this whole crowd came in and the wedding went forward only about 15 minutes late. Later, we tried to find out what it was that kept people away for so long. And what we heard was everyone was in their cars waiting for the end of the USC Notre Dame game. And since SC won, it was that God clearly was on our side.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great story.
A great story. And my sincere condolences for your loss.
Well, thank you. Her body was just slowing down. She was in a wheelchair her whole life. And just in 2022, things were kind of catching up. And as I say, the spirit tends to move ahead of the body sometimes. And that's what happened. But she's watching somewhere. And if I misbehave, I'll hear about it.
I'm sure she is. Yeah.
So I'm not at all worried. I'm going to try to be a good kid. But that's great that you did go to USC. And you said something else, I think, that's really interesting to me. And that is that where you grew up, people were very nice and very friendly. And I think that is so often true. And a lot of times people stray into some of these areas and they think it's going to be horrible. And they look for the worst and they find it because they're not looking for the best. They're not looking to try to find friendly people. And it's so unfortunate that too many times we don't really look for the best in people, and unfortunately, then it comes out.
Well, I could only say great things about East LA and the barrio that I grew up in. Were there elements in there? Of course,
sure.
We were about a block away from the gang activity. And you just had a choice, right? And thanks to my parents that were super strict, they didn't allow me to make those kind of choices when I was younger, to join the gangs. But that element was in front of you, and some of the folks I still know today, some of them that were in gangs and stuff, now they've settled down, they have families. But I just have to say that there was a sense of community there where I grew up, even or despite the elements that were around us. So yes, do I hear the negativity when somebody mentions East Los Angeles? Yes, but I have to say that even though we grew up in poverty and even though there was a lot of challenges for us as a family, I really cherish the neighbors that were there when I remember that, the kind of those gatherings. We had nothing, so there was we played, with just a regular basketball or something. There was no communication via a cell phone or anything like that. And so, I have only good things to say. And part of my upbringing there, today I realized that, wow, I was working on a strategic plan without even knowing what a strategic plan was back in the day. Yeah.
Do you think that today it's harder or there's more of that kind of activity, or is it just that people are now having their attention drawn more to it? And again, still, I think all too often deal with it in such a negative way. But do you think it's worse than it was?
I mean, if we're talking about gang activity, I mean, that's still, I think, is just as prominent that today, unfortunately, than what it was this as it was back, when I grew up in the 60s. I believe that leaders, community leaders, our representatives really have to invest into communities, invest in education, invest in jobs, right? Because people naturally, some of them will start looking for a way of making a living, and they may choose a different route. In addition to that, gangs, then they become a family. So,
Yeah.
parents do need to, also be aware of what their kids are doing and support them and nurture them and show them love, right? And because if you really get to the bottom of it and you start speaking to a gang member, she or he, there's underlining problems, and maybe it comes from family. There could be so many things that are happening, but I truly have a vision that someday there's going to be more funds invested into communities like East Los Angeles, because a lot of great people come out of there. And I'm not talking about myself, but there's just a lot of good people, good-hearted people that really like to help their neighbor and others.
When I was selling in New York, when still living in California and would go back and spend days at a time, I stayed at a particular hotel in Midtown Manhattan near Times Square. And if I went out at night, every so often somebody would come up and he would say, I'm one of the guardian angels. You're familiar with them?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I remember. Yes.
And he said, I'm with the guardian angels. I want to walk with you. And I said, you don't need to. And he said, I want to. And I didn't mind. But what I always felt and experienced was, if I treated people right, if I treated people like people, it I was treated like someone, and I didn't really need to fear any of the other kinds of things. Now, I'm sure there were crazies around, but in general, I really do think that if we would be a little bit more open to just accepting and not fear so much those things that we don't understand, or those kinds of communities that we're not as knowledgeable about. And I'm not so much thinking of the gangs, but just all the other communities like East LA and Watts and so on, we would be a whole lot better off, and we would learn to get along with people better.
No, I totally agree with that. I think it's building relationships, right? And getting to know people, and getting to know, folks from different ethnicities, people with different abilities, right? It all comes together here, is that knowing them, respecting them, listening for understanding, and then building a friendship, right? And collaborating together for the betterment of humanity. That's what I believe where it's at. And everybody has an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And I just think that we somehow also need to get the politics out of providing the funds. And I don't know, it's just people have locked themselves into some very hard political decisions sometimes that don't help the process at all.
Yeah, Michael. So yes, part of it is, yes, taking out the politics, but the other part of it is bringing in the politics, right? Is letting our representatives, our public officials, and on the local level, on the municipality level, state level, on the federal level, to bring them in and know what the issues are, because we're all part of the fabric of society.
Yeah.
All somehow we do give, and we do contribute. And I don't care what ethnicity, what religion you are, if you have a disability, if you don't have a disability, we're all part of the society. And I believe that our representatives really need to know that, and how we contribute in a very big way.
I think the biggest part is they need to be open to listening to hear that. Some do, some don't. And I am a firm believer in the fact that over time, all the issues that we need to deal with will get dealt with.
I believe so too. And I think those that don't listen to communities, for whatever reason it is, that eventually somebody in their family or them may end up in that situation themselves. And then, they'll begin to have that lived experience. But while they've had a chance to make a difference, and if they ignore it, then there was a window of opportunity for them to do something.
Yeah. Well, and if they choose to ignore that, again, I believe that things will happen to deal with that, whatever it is. And hopefully it doesn't a negative, horrible thing that has to happen to make them realize it. But I think in some cases that has been what has occurred. But I have a lot of faith in the human race.
Yes, so do I.
Well, so what was your degree in from USC?
It was in business administration.
Ah, and did you go to any football games?
I did. Yeah.
Good for you. My wife did too.
Yeah. And most recently, I've gone to the last two USC UCLA games. So last year, it was great. It was fantastic. We were at the Rose Bowl in UCLA territory. This year, not so good.
Not so good.
We were at home at the Coliseum, and it didn't work out well, but it was a fun game.
I don't know. What do you think of the coach?
I think that he's good, and I think that he will continue to be successful this next year.
I think it will be better this year.
Yeah, I think so. And they got this young man that showed up at the bowl game. I'm trying to remember Miller. I think it was Miller. It was his name, and he showed up. He did a fantastic job, and I do see a great future for him at USC and perhaps in the NFL.
Well, it'll be fun. I know they got a new defensive coordinator, and that they needed. So we'll see how it goes. But we won't bore everyone with football and our likes, but nevertheless, it's part of the world. So there you go. But then you went on to the University of San Francisco, right?
I did. So that was a few years later, and I graduated, I believe, in 2004. And it was something that drew me, and it was an opportunity for me to get a degree in theology at a Jesuit university. So at that time, I was working for a faith-based Catholic organization, a national organization called the National Catholic Council for Hispanic Ministry. And what we looked at overall in the United States were the issues of upper mobility for Hispanic Catholics, for immigrants, for our sisters and brothers that are immigrants, the issues that are happening with Hispanic families. Education was a huge thing. How do we move, our children that from grammar school to Catholic high schools to perhaps Catholic universities, where unfortunately, I have to say, is that there's not a whole lot of access, and we're the backbone of the Catholic Church, right? Because it's so expensive. So those were the things that we were part of, and one of the opportunities that came about was attending the University of San Francisco, and I received, I earned a degree in theology, master's degree. Yes.
Well, let's go back a little bit. So you graduated from SC, then what did you do?
Well, then I had several jobs after that. I worked for a nonprofit in Los Angeles that helped people get jobs. And then after that, I believe I went into a construction company as a contract administrator. I was there for maybe a year and a half or so. And then I went on, for whatever reason, I was interested in real estate. So then I worked for a corporation that did mortgage loans. And in that, I met a gentleman who had his own real estate company. And then we decided to start our own real estate company. So I did that for about seven 7 years. And then I got hired to work with this nonprofit, the National Catholic Council that I just mentioned a little
Mm-hmm.
bit ago. I was there for about 10 and a half years. So I had a chance to travel around the nation and to meet with Hispanic Catholic leaders, lay leaders. I got to meet with um, religious orders of men and women, from Jesuits, Franciscans, many other different orders. So it was really a insightful time for me in those 10 and a half years about our church. And then after that, we moved from Los Angeles to Phoenix. And shortly after that, I got hired. Let's see here. I'm trying to remember I got hired by Governor Janet Napolitano. So
Ah.
I was her small business advocate. And in about 11 months, I moved into being a deputy director of one of her departments, the Arizona Registrar of Contractors. And soon after that, I was on her cabinet. So I was honored to serve under Janet Napolitano. When she moved to Washington, D.C., because President Barack Obama
Mm-hmm.
uh, appointed her as Secretary of Homeland Security. Then I moved on to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here, Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And then about a year later, then that's where I had folks come to me and said, there's an organization here, that is the United Cerebral Palsy um, Association of Central Arizona. And I said, well, I'm going to maybe put the word out and see who might be interested in that position, which was a CEO position. And then they said, no, we're looking for somebody like you. So to make a long story short, I got hired, and that was really a beginning of a lot of things. I got hired not because I had the clinical background or the researcher background, or that I had been involved with disabilities. I got hired so then I can take that organization to another level where they wanted to increase their revenues. They wanted to increase their brand awareness. They wanted to make sure that we had stronger collaborations in the community in Arizona, in Phoenix. And that's why I got hired to make sure that we enhance that to benefit the children and adults that we were serving.
Well, so what do you think about the differences since you've been in a position to have done both, working in the for-profit corporate kind of world as opposed to working in the nonprofit sector?
That's Michael, that's a really interesting question because there are similarities.
I know. And I've done the same thing. I've worked
Right.
for both as well.
Well, look, I'm working for a nonprofit, and those that are going to be listening to this that are CEOs are working in development for both for-profits and nonprofits. There's not a big difference there because we strive to be sustainable like a for-profit. We strive to look at years to come because we want to be around and help people in the next 10, 15, 75 years, which we're celebrating this year, our 75th anniversary. So part of our responsibility as a leader, as a president and CEO, is really looking beyond the years that you're going to be there. You can serve for 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but really I truly believe that the test is once you leave, will that organization continue to survive because of what you've put together? So to answer your question, a lot of similarities between a for-profit and a nonprofit. However, at the end of the day, the mission for us is to not make a profit, but to be sustainable so we can continue our life-saving work.
And for not for profits, nonprofits generally tend to work more in an arena where they're trying to make a social difference. And although they're still selling products, the products are different. They're oftentimes less tangible. Although a lot of the services that they provide, like UCP provides and so on, end up being very tangible, but still there's an intangibility. But still, I agree with you that the reality is that they're very similar. Development is extremely similar to what a for-profit company does. And in reality, when you're in development, you're in sales. And when you're in sales, you're in development. It's just that people have come up with two words for the same thing, but they're so similar in what you ultimately are trying to get from them. And ultimately, how you present to people who you want to be your customers or your donors is so much the same as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michael. So in development, because I also have a background in fundraising, it's aligning with the folks that have the same vision and that would want to contribute for an impact that's happening in society. So with United Cerebral Palsy and our affiliates, they're providing direct services to children and adults with cerebral palsy and many other conditions. So there are people that are very, very generous. But I have to say that in the world of philanthropy, now donors are becoming a lot more informed, and they want to make sure that the dollar that they're going to donate, that it's going to go a long way.
Yeah.
So obviously they're looking at administrative costs versus your program costs, right? And that's a good thing. I encourage the philanthropic community to do that, to do their research, and to pick those nonprofits in the United States or maybe around the world that are really making a huge impact. Michael, we serve approximately 155,000 children and adults on an annual basis, and this is our affiliates that are working day in and day out to provide those services, vital services, life-saving services, and services that maybe other organizations don't or people don't want to do. So those are the things that people that are going to invest, their return is really what's happening in the lives of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people.
Many, many years ago, I remember watching a little bit of a telethon. It was actually on Channel 13 out here, KCOP, and it was back in what had to be the early to mid 80s, I think. And it was a telethon put on by the Society for the Prevention of Blindness, which I don't even know whether they're around anymore. But at the end of the telethon, they had raised, I think, like $200,000. It was a local, just independent television station doing it. But what we learned was that 95% of the cost of the telethon went to pay for it, and that the organization only ended up with about 5% of that $200,000, which is, of course, a real problem.
It is. So, like I mentioned before, is that today you're having more informed donors, right, that are looking at that ratio, right?
Yeah.
How much of their dollar is going to go to actual services, right, versus costs for putting on, like you mentioned, a telethon. Today, there's not a whole lot of telethons going on because you have a million channels. But back in the day, I remember the channels: 13, 5, 7, 4, and maybe
11, 9. Yep.
Yeah, 11, 9. So there was a few more. Today, what do you have? 2, 3, 400, right? And then
or more,
and all of that. There's other ways that I certainly believe that can be as impactful and less expensive than the telethons. But
sure,
you bring up a really good point, is that if you're a donor, if you're a philanthropist, if you really want to have your money change people's lives, they have to do some homework.
Yeah.
And they have to look at that nonprofit, and to make sure that 90% of your dollar is not going into it, and 90% is not going into it administrative expenses.
It may well be that 90% works, or maybe a little bit less. You're spending a little bit more money on administration if you can justify it to say, but look, out of that, we are able to reach more people and thus get more money. But I do think it's a tightrope.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. You have to be strategic when you're out fundraising, and your case statement really has to be where it's so compelling that, and then showing the data and bringing children and adults to tell their story, right, of how their lives have been changed. Those are the storytelling is really one part or a major part of development and fundraising.
Well, tell us a little bit about UCP, the history and so on, if you would, to inform more people about it.
Well, one, I'm so excited to share with everybody that we're celebrating our 75th anniversary, right? 75 years of providing vital services, right? 75 years of having our direct service professionals, the folks that are working at home under the home community-based services. We have pre-Ks, the different therapies that are out there. We have group homes, we have transportation, we have employment. There's so many things that we're bringing to the community, but it started in 1949, right? It started with concerned citizens and concerned parents that they felt that in that time, which was a totally different world for people with disabilities, that they felt that something more had to happen, that no more can society or the doctors or people in authority can say, well, your kids have to go to an institution, no matter if they had Down syndrome, well, maybe autism wasn't so prevalent back then, maybe not as prevalent, but cerebral palsy, spinal bifida, all of that, that their kids suddenly were taken away from their home.
Right. Oh,
Right.
my parents were told by our doctors that they should send me to a home when it was discovered I was blind, and my parents rejected that, which
Yeah.
was very fortunate. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and good for your parents, and that's how it started, right? I think a lot of nonprofits started in that way, but back in 1949, that's when a group of parents got together and said we have to do something more. So
right.
then today we've evolved where we're in the disability world. There's greater access than there was before. There's more inclusion than there was before, right? We're trying, at least at UCP National and our affiliates, we're trying to help people be more independent. If it's through legislation, research, therapies, everything that we're trying to do, and we're very centric to those issues that are out there, and we're trying to make a huge difference. So what I'm looking at is I'm looking at another 75 years, and that United Cerebral Palsy, one, we're trying to, and here are 4 goals. One is brand awareness. Also let folks know about our 75th year anniversary. But one of the bigger things, Michael, that is a challenge for us is that United Cerebral Palsy serves children and adults with cerebral palsy and other conditions. So we're trying to bring that message out there and figuring out how can we let the community know that if your child has Down syndrome, autism, that we are there providing vital services for them as well. The next goal is development, or what we just spoke about, connecting with the philanthropic community, because while a lot of our affiliates rely on government funding and reimbursement, I believe that there's another level that we have to engage with, and that's the philanthropic community, right? There are millions and millions of dollars. Michael, I go to an event called the Heckling event in Orlando. I've been going there for now 5 years. And those professionals that are working with planned giving, some of them will come to me and say that their clients don't know where to give their money to. That's why we're present there. And that's why other nonprofits are there too as well, is that we need to educate the community that you can actually invest in something that's going to bring back this return of investment, but more of a humanity return and something that's going to be great for society. The other goal that we have is advocacy. So we're known throughout the federal government. The Biden administration, as well as the Trump administration, communicated with us, especially during COVID. So we had communications with the White House. We still do. We're engaged at the Congress and Senate level with various representatives and senators to make sure that they create legislation that's going to be beneficial for our for the disability community, and that we don't ever go back to the institutions. That would be their only option. Unfortunately, Michael, today there's still institutions that exist, not as many as before, but there's still institutions. And the last goal we have is to grow our footprint, not only nationally, but internationally. So we're having discussions locally in places that we're not present to grow our footprint, to see how we can collaborate. We're also I'm having conversations with people on the global level, like the International Cerebral Palsy Society, like AACPDM, the Academy for Cerebral Palsy. I've been invited twice. Once, well, I got invited last year to the International Congress on Cerebral Palsy in Mexico City. I got invited again. I was there present and I gave a speech. And I got invited again this year in March. I'll be in Mérida, Yucatan, at an international congress again. And that brings a lot of awareness for us, brand awareness. And the main thing is really collaboration. So I kind of touched upon some of the goals, Michael, and some of the things that important things and vital things that our affiliates are doing. So if there's something else that you want me to elaborate, I'd be more than glad to do so.
How are you working toward creating more and better brand awareness to the general population?
Well, one of the things that we're doing, given that we have this window of opportunity that we're celebrating our 75th year, and that started in February and will go all the way through January 31st, is that one, we have a lot of partners out there that are doing things like you're doing, Accessibility, right? That invited me on this program. And that's one of the beautiful things, that in social media, it's not very expensive for us to be out there. So we're using the media vehicles such as LinkedIn, Facebook, and the others that are out there. And we're also using YouTube to spread the message out there. So we're also sharing the stories of our affiliates and their accomplishments and the people that are being served, the parents and their children, so they can share those great stories that sometimes are miracle stories because of the people that are serving them and providing quality services, care, and love. So that's one vehicle. The other one is that I was on 26. I traveled to 26 locations last year. So I'm also providing that message out there. And then within our affiliate network, they're also doing marketing, and they're doing brand awareness as well. So it's really this whole coordination that we want, not only the nation know, but globally, let the people know who is UCP, in United Cerebral Palsy.
What caused UCP to add in, as part of the services that are provided, services for people with Downs and autism, as opposed to just UCP or CP?
Yeah. So if I go back to when I was at the local United Cerebral Palsy, the UCP of Central Arizona, it just happened to be that the same programs that were provided for children and adults with cerebral palsy also were beneficial to other conditions. I'm not a researcher, but when there's a breakthrough in cerebral palsy or in autism or in a different condition, they try to see if that same breakthrough will help people with different conditions. What we do know is that the therapies that are being offered to children and adults with cerebral palsy, those same types of therapies are also impactful to other conditions. So what was happening is that then parents started to I guess the word went out. And what we have across the board in the United States is that we have a high percentage of non-cerebral palsy clients, or we'll call them family members, that are getting services because that's much needed. One, Michael, is like respite care. Any family can use that rest and that respite care, no matter what the condition is. So if you're offering that, then you can offer it to the disability community, a broad range of people that have various conditions.
Which makes perfect sense, because a lot of the care that needs to be provided is very similar. Well, or is the same.
Yes.
Well, I understand, had an involvement with cancer, and you survived that. How has that affected you in your attitude? Because clearly you're a very sensitive person and very much involved in community and family and helping people. But what was the whole situation with you in cancer?
I think it's the experience that all people go through when they first hear that you have cancer, right? First thought is, are you going to survive? The first thing that comes to you is that it's terminal, right? You're not going to get through it. When you hear news like that, and maybe it's the same as parents hearing that their child has cerebral palsy or a disability. It's a scary moment. It's a scary time. So it was a difficult time for me and for my family, especially I think my family, knowing that I had transitional carcinoma, high grade, and it was a tumor in my bladder that was 9.5 centimeters. I haven't really talked about it a lot, but it's been 10 years. So February, when I had seen that as a suggestion, like, you want to talk about that, my first thought was, no, I think I'm going to skip it. But a few seconds later, I said, maybe it's time for me to share with the community, because it's been 10 years since I was diagnosed. So, and I'll try to make this short. I got diagnosed, huge tumor. They had asked me if I wanted that tumor to be taken out, otherwise I could die. And I said, of course. So they took out the tumor. I had a brilliant surgeon that did that. And then after that, they basically said to me that if I don't do radical surgery, taking out my bladder, taking out some lymph nodes, my prostate, that I wouldn't live very long, that I had really like a 35% chance or less to live. So I had said that I wanted to put a pause on this rush, and that perhaps there's an option out there. Perhaps there was another way, because I knew that billions of dollars have been raised for cancer. And maybe because this is a whole new journey for me, that the cure was somewhere out there. Well, after going to 5 different doctors for second opinions, they all said the same to me, that I only had one choice, and that choice was radical surgery. And even after that, I was confused, I was scared, but there was a pause, that I felt that maybe there was something out there. So thanks to my sister, she really saved my life. She connected me with the scientist that she was researching. And that scientist said, I've only done lab studies on this particular oil called frankincense oil. I haven't done any clinical studies. And today, Michael, there's still no clinical studies on frankincense oil. So I started doing that. 3 months after they took the tumor out, I had 20 more tumors come back in my bladder, but they were small. They were lesions. So I just asked them to scrape them. The doctors were furious with me. I get it. I mean, that was a protocol. I totally get it. But something people say that I had a lot of courage. I'm not sure if it was like just something. It could have been
Something
something.
was telling you.
I mean, I definitely there was a lot of prayer during that time.
Yeah.
A lot of prayer happening at that time. I just couldn't see myself dying, and I didn't want that to happen. So just to kind of close on this is that when those 20 tumors came back, they scraped them. There was supposed to be a lot more coming back, or it was going to invade my body. 3 months later, I had nothing, absolutely nothing. 3 months after that, I had 6 lesions come back, and that was March of 2015. So it's been 9 years since the last reoccurrence. It's been 10 years since I was diagnosed, and I get checked very often, once a year. In the beginning, I would go in and get checked every 3 months. So it's been quite the miracle. But I have to say this is that one, I had changed my diet at the time. For about 4.5 years. I was strictly doing a lot of juicing, no sugar, a lot of prayer, a lot of family love, a lot of support. I did the frankincense oil. So I think in a comprehensive way, that helped me and that gave me another option. And I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful that every day I wake up and I say to God, thank you for sparing me. But on the advocacy side, Michael, I just didn't leave it there. I've had conversations with the University of Arizona, with the Arizona State University, with Cancer Centers of America, with St. Joseph's Hospital, with my alma mater, USC. And the last conversation I had was with Georgetown University, and these were top CEOs. And I was sharing my documentation because I have it all there. But sadly, I have to say that they're not interested. They're not interested in a cure. And I'll continue to pursue it when the opportunity continues on. But it's only my story. And I didn't want to leave it where, well, Lord, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It never came back. So thank you. No, I have a responsibility to figure out some way, somehow, that my story can turn into a clinical study, and that someday, and maybe not in my time, that there's going to be an option for millions of people that will contract cancer. So that's my story in a nutshell. Thank you for asking.
So what did the frankincense oil actually do? I assume that you feel it was a very significant part of
Yeah.
your ability to deal with it.
Yeah. It's a good question because medically I can't tell you because we haven't done
Right.
Yeah, we haven't done clinical studies, and I've been asking these universities and these hospitals and these cancer firms, that are out there, and I said, why don't we do the clinical studies so you can see exactly what it did. I can't tell you that what it did. The only thing I can tell you is that as they took samples of the cancerous tumors, so you had the big tumor,
Mhm.
and then you had the 20 small tumors, and then you had the 6 lesions that, according to the scientist, Dr. Lin, H.K. Lin, what he did see is that the cancer cells were becoming less aggressive.
Mm.
And at the end, some of the cancer cells actually turn into good cells. Now, people can believe that or not. I'm okay with that.
Sure.
The only thing I'm saying, Michael, is that there should be clinical studies on this, because I believe it would save hundreds of thousands of lives. What was it? We don't know. Was it the combination? Was
Yeah.
it the combination of me juicing on a daily basis for 4.5 years? Was it that as a Catholic, I was going through all the different sacraments, prayers and healing masses. So I believe there was a holistic healing process, and then my family that was supporting me during a very difficult time.
Sounds to me like it's time to write a book.
I've been asked many times, and I think when I feel that when I'm ready for that
Yeah, that's
that will happen.
yes.
Yes.
you've got to feel ready and feel that it's the right time, but that might be one way to bring visibility to it.
Yes.
Well, you value family a lot. I understand that there are music connections in your family. Has music always been a part of your life, or
I,
or
yeah,
what?
I think so. I think that, well, I know so because when I was the trumpet player, young trumpet player at St. Lucy's Catholic Church, a few years later, my lovely wife, Norma, joined the choir. I didn't know we
Hmm.
were going to get married, but she joined the choir. And, we have this thing that she doesn't agree with me, but I say, hey, when I met you, when I seen you, it was love at first sight. And I said, but not for you. It took a while. And she says, no, no, no. But so music, I was playing trumpet, Norma was singing, and then later we got married. And then we had our first child. It was Andrea Michelle, our daughter, our beautiful daughter, who's with child today, her and her husband, Fabian. So she knew that in our home, there was a lot of music happening. And if it was church or at home. And then our second child, Armando Michael, he started catching on a little bit, but we started to notice that he started to sing and sing right in tune. And then we said, hey, maybe there's something here. So his first recital in Los Angeles, he sang Popeye the Sailor Man and Over the Rainbow, and he did pretty good. So later he joined as a young child, 5 years old. He joined the choir at St. Lucy's, and then we moved. We moved from Los Angeles over to Phoenix, Arizona, which was a great blessing being here. And we then were exploring how we can continue to support his talent. And he joined the Grammy Award-winning Phoenix Boys Choir, and that's where he began to sing. Got to meet some wonderful people. They had wonderful directors there and had a great experience. That experience led him to fall in love with the classics.
Mm.
So there he began to be part of some of the local opera performances. So to make a long story short, Norma, my wife, and I supported him. He went to the Cleveland Institute of Music.
Ooh.
From there, in vocals. And then from there, he went to the University of Missouri in Kansas City for his master's. And today he's a professional opera singer. He's a baritone. It's been amazing. All our kids are amazing. I also have to mention that our youngest, Andrew Matthew, he went to Gonzaga University and then graduated from Lewis and Clark in clinical psychology. And he's worked with a lot of kids with disabilities. He's a drummer and he's a guitar player. So yes, music is a big part of our family.
Well, it is getting to be that time of the year that Gonzaga will become visible again as we get back down to March Madness.
Yeah.
I actually had the pleasure of going up there once to speak, and I hadn't really known a lot about Gonzaga at the time, and they were the ones who told me how everyone always said, "Where is Gonzaga? What kind of a place is it?" And so I've kept up with it ever since. But it is kind of funny that their basketball team is good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's a great Jesuit university. He had a great experience. This is Andrew. He had a great experience out there. So yes, I totally agree. Yeah, we had a chance to go out to, well, I'm trying to remember the city here, Spokane.
Yeah,
Spokane. Various times to visit him.
that's pretty cool. Well, so is he professionally doing music now?
No, so Andrew, our youngest, he's professionally now a clinical psychologist.
Ah,
Yeah. Now Armando Michael, he is a professional opera singer,
right.
and that's what he does. So, his one of his dreams is going to be singing at the Metropolitan,
Ooh,
and we do see that perhaps happening within a year or two because he'll
that'd be great.
he'll be auditioning for that probably very soon. And he's very young. He's just 34 years old. So
That'd be super. What would you like people to know about the disability community in general? When we think about disabilities, when there's so many prejudices, what would you like people to know and in terms of disabilities and how to maybe change attitudes?
Yeah, well, they're definitely part of the fabric of society. And nobody, not me or anybody else in any organization can speak for them. We need to allow for them and give them that opportunity and space to voice their concerns, to voice whatever joy they have, to voice things that we need to hear in our community. We have to provide, while we're here in the United States and there's been laws that have been enacted, that laws now have to be updated. We have antiquated laws that do not even pay people with disabilities even minimum wage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that we really have to be conscious of a community that is part of our society. We need to engage furthermore. We have to collaborate. We need them as public officials. They need to run for office, right? Some of them do. They have to be part of the decision-making decisions that are being made from all levels of government, all levels of corporation, all levels of nonprofits. And that's the way I really see it, is that, and we also have to have breakthroughs in research, right? What are some of the things that we can do so those lives can be more, that they would have more of a more access,
Mm-hmm.
right? That even if you go to certain states in the United States that I've been, there's not even accessibility for wheelchairs.
Yeah.
And just speak about the airlines, right? How and why are people thinking in those corporations that a person that has a disability can easily go into their bathrooms? There's no way,
Yeah.
right? Flying, especially if it's a long flight. So, there's been some great things, Michael, that have evolved and happened through a collaboration of a lot of advocates, and a lot of them are self-advocates.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely true. So what is UCP Inc. doing to celebrate its 75th anniversary? What kinds of plans do you have and where do you go from here?
Well, we do have an annual conference coming up in Orlando this year in April. So that's a good thing for us, But the bigger thing for us is to celebrate is really bringing that education, bringing that awareness of what we're doing, not only in here in the United States, but we also have affiliates in Canada. So as we celebrate, part of our celebration is educating the society about exactly what we do, and to please, knock on our door for help. So that's really part of it. The other part of it is acknowledging the folks that started UCP back in 1949, right? Like the Goldensons, and also the Hausmans and many others that have helped us to get through the 75 years.
Yeah. Well, it's a great milestone to be able to celebrate 75 years. And I am sure that you, with your background, is very concerned about making sure that there is great sustainability for the future, which is really important and cool that you're thinking about that, because it's something that always needs to be with us in whatever we're doing. That's a good thing. Any kind of last thoughts that you have that you want to convey to people who are listening or watching us?
Yes. One is, first, I want to share my gratitude for inviting me, Michael. And then second, please reach out to us, the disability community. Please find us at ucp.org. We may be in your backyard. If there are organizations out there that want to become an affiliate of United Cerebral Palsy, please reach out to us as well. We are here. We want to continue to be here for the next 75 years so that our community can be part and be an inclusive part of our society, that we can help bring that independence. But we can continue to see those miracles that children that were told and families that were told that they would never walk. I've seen them walk, and where physicians that said to a mom and dad that their child would never move or never speak. And I've seen them hug their parents and tell them that they love them. Right. And we want to continue to make those miracles happen through therapies, through early detection, through early intervention, all these forms of a reach that we have through United Cerebral Palsy in the United States and Canada, and watch for us in the near future as we begin to go global. And that's really a vision that I have. But and also, again, is that it's important to know that we know that, I know that, Michael, you know that, is that everybody is a fabric of society some way, somehow, no matter their abilities. And that's really important message for people to know.
I agree. Well, I want to thank you for being here with us and conveying all this information. And I hope people will take it to heart and that they'll support UCP and reach out and learn more about the organization, and that you are doing and will continue to do a lot to just help people in general with disabilities, which is cool. I appreciate that. And I want to thank, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank you. And I also want to thank Accessibility, right? That's how we got here.
Yeah.
So I really thank them for what they're doing and providing. I love their model that they have a for-profit model. However, the services that they provide for nonprofits are free. And that's amazing. So we're really happy with the services, the access services for websites, the accessibility that they're providing for people in the disability community to have that access.
Well, thank you. And we're excited about the time ahead. And I think that's a good thing. And we'll all work to make it happen. Well, I want to thank everyone who was listening and watching today. We really appreciate it. I hope that you'll give us a 5-star rating wherever you're observing our podcast. We value that. Love it if you'd reach out to me, give me your thoughts, your opinions. And Armando, for you and for all of our guests, our listeners and so on today, if you know of anyone else who ought to be a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, please let us know. Provide introductions. We're always looking for guests. You can reach out to me directly at michaelhi@accessibility.com. That's MICHAELHI at accessibility.com. Or go to our podcast page, www.michaelhinkson.com/podcast. And Michael Hinkson is spelled MICHAELHINGSON.com/podcast. So we really do value all the thoughts and information and suggestions that people provide. As I think I've mentioned to many of you before, I also do travel and speak, especially after September 11th, 2001. If anyone needs a speaker, please reach out. You can get me easiest at speaker@michaelhinkson.com. But however you do it, you've got all sorts of ways to reach out to me. Love to hear from you. And, once again, Armando, I want to thank you very much for being here, and thank you for all of your time today.
Michael, thank you. Many blessings to you and your family, and many blessings to everybody out there who's going to listen to this podcast interview.